Good evening, friends. We are back with our expert conversation series of Hangouts. And today we have Ahmed with us, and we are talking about scaling. So before we start conversation on scaling, let's know Ahmed. So Ahmed, can you introduce yourself so that we can talk about scaling after that?
Sure. My name is Ahmed Sidky. I originally started my career as a developer. And after a number of years of developing and managing teams and all that, I decided to do my master's in requirements engineering. I thought solving the problem of changing requirements would make all of our lives easier. I failed at solving that problem, but came to a big realization that requirements should continue to evolve and change, and we shouldn't try to fix them up front. And I pivoted at that point, Saket, to do my PhD in Agile software development, and really my focus of my dissertation was on how to help organizations become more agile. So that was my focus. It was how to change organizations. And then from there, I co-authored a book with Greg Smith called Becoming Agile in an Imperfect World. I sat on a bunch of steering committees, founded the International Consortium for Agile, and I have been leading Agile transformations with large Fortune 100 companies, usually 4,000 to 5,000 people as part of the transformation. And recently, I have joined Riot Games as their Director of Development Management.
Great. And it's interesting to know that you are coming from requirement management or requirement engineering background. And I think in Agile world nowadays, we are talking again about those modeling, scope modeling, rule modeling, and all those stuff. Before we get into scaling, like how relevant do you find those kind of scope models, those kind of requirement modeling in Agile projects?
I think, Saket, it totally depends on how people view it. I think what happened with Agile is we went from one extreme to another. We went from, when Agile was first sort of introduced to people, there was this sentiment of, wow, this is a breath of fresh air, so let's abandon everything we used to do and do this very lightweight approach. Now, as Agile applications scaled, there is very legitimately aspects of what we do and what we work on that have a high cost of change, that have high security risks or vulnerabilities or life dependencies or whatnot. And I think part of agility from my point of view is being able to change the way you work depending on the work itself, right? So we're not treating a simple application like a life-dependent application or an application where if it fails, lives are at risk or serious money is at risk. So I think as Agile is getting more into the way we develop bigger and more critical applications, the need is naturally emerging again to say, wait a minute, have we really thought of this or that? And that's where some of the modeling languages and all that stuff comes in. So it's really not going back to it, but it's using the right amount of it. And I think that makes total sense.
Great. And so this is something again related with the scaling. So before we talk about scaling, when people talk about Agile has to scale and we have lots of scaling models, how do you define scaling? What scaling means in Agile work for you? Yeah.
Well, I think what's more important than defining scaling is defining Agile. Because I think if you ask anyone what scaling means, it's to make something small bigger. But what are we making bigger, right? I think that's the question that I invite everyone to truly reflect on. What are they trying to scale? Are they trying to scale a process or are they trying to scale a mindset? The way I have always viewed Agile is that Agile is a mindset that is grounded in the software domain, by a set of values and principles, which is the Agile Manifesto, and then really manifested through an unlimited number of practices that keep evolving and should keep evolving, right? So if that's what we're scaling, then we're scaling a mindset. So we're taking a certain way of thinking from a team level to an initiative program, enterprise level, right? So you're changing the way people think across 5, 10,000, 50,000 people. That's what I view scaling Agile as. And the reason I don't view it as scaling a process is because I think the whole aspect of Agile is that it's not a process, right? It is a mindset. And the mindset is manifested through a set of process activities and behavioral changes and mindset changes and the thing that should change the most second are the process activities. We do retrospectives at the end of every, if you do iterations or reflection workshops or whatever you want to call them, right? And the whole point is, what are we going to change about the way we work? So the whole point is that aspect of what we do should continuously change. But the big transformation I view that organizations should and need to go through is changing their mindset from an industrial age work environment, work system, work approach, work mindset to a knowledge age work system, work environment, work mindset, right? And that is quite a shift. So when me and you talked about, so what topic would I like to talk about? And scaling Agile was one of them. It's a topic very dear to me because I see a massive challenge at trying to scale a mindset. And I'd love to talk about that. But scaling the process, less interesting to me.
Okay, so if I get you right, you are more like you think scaling is scaling an agile mindset, scaling an inspect and adapt attitude, working in a small batch sizes, thinking about self-organizing team at all levels, and bringing an agility in an organization rather than thinking of, okay, you have 10 people, how can we make 100 people work together? So that is something is a process scaling rather than process scaling. You focus more on that. Okay, we have a one team inspecting and adapting, doing small batches. How can we make the complete organization take that agile approach? Am I getting it right?
Yes, yeah. That's spot on. And the reason I'm less interested in the process is if you have so 10 people are working on Agile. I want to make that 100. You have one of two options: to change the way the 100 think about work, or to give them a new process that hopefully will change the way they think about work. But the challenge here is part of the mindset that we're trying to change is people sitting back and telling their bosses or whoever, tell me what I need to do next. Give me a checklist. That's part of the mindset we're trying to change. So by actually giving them a new scaled process, you're technically reinforcing the mindset you're trying to change, right? So I just gave you a process that's supposed to be flexible and agile and built to change the way you think. But the whole point about changing the way I think is just not to give me stuff and let me actually think and develop my own. So if we can actually change the way people think, then those 100 people will develop a process that works for them. And that's where methodologies become helpful as good starting points for those discussions, right? So Scrum, SAFe, and as we talk about scaling, you have less, DAD, SAFe, all these and more coming out. I'm actually really happy that more scaling methodologies are coming out, because for a long time there was like Scrum of Scrums and there was SAFe, right? And DAD, and now there's less and hopefully more coming. The reason is there's no one right formula for scaling. It totally depends on the group of people and what they're trying to do and the constraints around them, right? And so I like for people to look and say, you know what, this is closest to our situation, but still not to focus on that, to take it as a initial, oh, this is a good idea. Let's take this, tweak this, move this, and they'll maybe make mistakes. But if they truly have the agile mindset, they're going to inspect and adapt. They won't be afraid to try new things. The culture of learning will be there, and they're going to develop their own scaling methodology that's actually better for them than trying to adopt a packaged methodology.
I agree with you, but the problem is many people, many organizations may not have that skill, that thought process to create and understand their own situation. And many methodologists who prescribe, say, role, checklists, governance structure, they have visited, they have seen good amount of organizations who are struggling to figure it out what they should be doing. Because since we started process improvement, you may talk about Damien cycle like plan, do, check, act. Everybody talks about that you can act, and any methodology of ages always talk about you can tailor it, but people don't look at it. They just pick up the methodology and they try to follow it. Because what I find is it's very difficult to make people think about their own problem and solving by themselves. It's again like a coaching, like you want them to solve their problem rather than prescribing it, and since it becomes too difficult, people end up prescribing it. So
I mean, all right, so let's really dive deep into this. I think this is at the core of the issue. You're right. Most organizations don't have currently the experience they need to tweak these methodologies. So we have one of two options, right? To give them a solution, safe, dad, less, all these, or to take the longer path and build that competency into the organization, right? One is a short-term fix, the other is a longer-term fix. One is focused on individuals and interactions, the other is focused on processes and tools, right? And the whole argument for the Agile movement was we need to focus on people collaborating, right? Not just because, by the way, if I just put a process in place and ask people to execute, potentially that's more efficient. I don't want you to think, right? I don't want you to engage in creative thinking. I want you just to do. But the reality is the Agile movement recognized that that's not the way to develop in the knowledge age we're in. And so the movement has been to change that. So when it comes to scaling, why is that any different, right? Why do we want to take the easy way out and say, yes, we don't have that internal capability, therefore let's take a methodology and please let's stop thinking and let's adopt it because, by the way, the experts have said this is what works. I'm not. So there's an interesting balance here, right? And I've talked a lot about shuhari, right? A method of progression and learning, where at the beginning of learning you follow. I get that, right? But then, so just to give people an example, if you've never heard of shuhari, think of yourself cooking, right? If it's the first time you're cooking a certain dish, you follow the recipe exactly. You don't, deviate from that because it's your first time. And then you start to do it more often and you say, okay, I can replace this ingredient. And then, you start to become a master at this and you create your own recipe. Agility for me lives in that re-level. Because if I only know one way of doing things, where's the flexibility there? There is no flexibility. So if the only way I know how to scale is safe or dad, and this is one of the questions that we're seeing on the webinar right now, right? So just to tie this in, so today on Scaling Agile, we hear new frameworks like dad, safe, less. What do you think about these frameworks? I think they're great frameworks. However, we have to understand how to use these and other frameworks that will come out in the future, right? These frameworks are experiences that are codified, right? So Dean, Craig, all these guys, Scott, they took a bunch of their experiences and codified them and said, we believe scaling should look like this. It's like, that's a great recipe. That makes total sense. Okay? I may apply it, but however, I have to understand that in applying that, there's very little agility, right, that I'm actually acquiring because I only know one way of scaling today. Okay? Now, if we equip people, if we actually invest time and effort in developing the way and changing the way people think about work and developing those internal competencies in people, then we can actually use this and say, hey guys, let's take a look at SAFe, DAD, and LESS, and all of these, right? And say, let's try them, let's apply them, right? You try the recipe once. And then what does our recipe look like? Because once you get to that our recipe, that recipe keeps changing, right? Your grandmother's recipe of whatever it is you eat, okay, it wasn't set in stone. Every time she did it, she added more salt this time, added more curry this time, added more meat this time, and it kept evolving. And that's what agility is. That's what mastery is. So how do I identify which path to take of these methodologies? Here's my advice. You have to deepen your learning first so that when you look at these methodologies, you're not stuck to them and you don't know how to take what's good and leave what's not relevant for you, right? So this is exactly like saying, hey, product owner, tell me what I need to build next, but don't give me context. I don't want to make a decision. Just tell me what I need to build next. Does that make sense? So people that ask me, which methodology should I start with, DAD or SAFe or LESS? That's a really hard question because I think the question is not the right question for people to ask. They should ask, what do I need to learn about scaling Agile first? And there's a nice discussion because we're going to talk about complexity theory. We're going to talk about organizational design, right? We're going to talk about, complex adaptive systems. We're going to talk about these things. So then when they look at these methodologies, they can actually dissect and say, okay, I'll take this from here, and this from here.
Great, but I understand that you are saying that we start with the recipe, we start with the framework, and then inspect and adapt as we move forward. So if I take it in a scaling context, I must be having recipe already. Like I must be having agile mindset group. And if I know it well in a small team or a small group, I should be able to evolve it at a bigger level. So especially for a scaling perspective, I can start with a recipe for Scrum for my small team. But when I am very successful cooking food for my family, I just need to figure it out how to take it for a big 100 gathering. If I want to take it for 100 gathering, I should be able to evolve it on my own if I have done it at a smaller level. What I find is that people are unable to do it at a smaller level, and then they apply a recipe at 100 people and then try to learn it. So how do you see this particular argument?
Yeah, I think that's at the core of the problem. I think what's happening. Let me. Can I show a couple of slides real
Yeah,
quickly?
please.
Yeah. So I'm going to slide share here. Let's see if this is going to work. All right. Give me 1 second. It's asking for plugin authorization. I did not expect that. But basically, what I want to talk about, and tell me if you guys can see the PowerPoint here. Can you see it? Second.
Yeah, I can see, but in a total mode, so it is not a one slide.
Okay, so let me try this one more time. Okay, so I'm just going to go this way. I think this may be better. All right, so you can see this slide right now, right? Second?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so if this is the definition that I talked about, Agile is a mindset. This mindset can be applied to multiple domains. We've sort of really focused on software development right now. This mindset in the software world is established through 4 values, guided by 12 principles, and then manifested through an unlimited number of practices. Now, what I want to get at is when we look at, I'm talking about the team level now, right? So if we look at Scrum or extreme programming or your own Agile process, it is a bunch of these practices bundled together. Now, here's where the danger comes in. Which way are you approaching Agile? Okay, so going back to your question, at the end of the day, you're manifesting through a set of practices. I get that, okay? But are you approaching Agile from the practices? Are you understanding Agile as a set of process and practices, and therefore your focus is on doing Scrum or doing extreme programming or doing SAFe? Or do you truly understand Agile as a mindset and a culture, and therefore there's a being aspect of it? So at the end of the day, if you start from down here, you will reach the practices. However, I have found my experience similar to what you were just saying. If you start from the practices, it's quite rare that you'll get to the mindset, because if you start from the practices, you have actually considered Agile as a process, right? There's no mindset behind a process. It's just a process, okay? And so going back to your question for a minute here, the teams that focus on Scrum and any methodology and try to apply it as their original recipe, but don't have the mindset, will continue to apply it as a recipe. The teams that first understand the context, the mindset, the change from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, the change from an industrial age way of thinking to a knowledge age way of thinking, the change from how to think about uncertainty, right, in what we develop. Instead of trying to fix things up front, we're actually trying to learn as we go. Those things are what will enable them to then break loose from Scrum. I'll give this last example and then we can go to answer a question. I can teach someone programming by sending them to 1 week training, or I go to a 4-year college. Both people on day 1 of a job may perform the same. However, there is a deep difference between both of those people. One person can move from shu to ha to ri. The other person most probably will be stuck in shu much longer. And again, shu means following the recipe blindly. Ri is that level of mastery. The student, right, that was educated on how to program has a deep sense of understanding, has the mindset of a programmer, right? The tools may still be new to them, but they have a depth of knowledge. They're still both following a recipe on day 1. But one can evolve to mastery, the other will be stuck in the recipe. That's what we're talking about. There's a fundamental gap today in the Agile space, from my point of view, in the education space, right? In truly saying, forget the methodology. Let's first understand the mindset. Let's first understand what we're really talking about here. What needs to change in the way developers think about work? What needs to change in the way managers think about work? What needs to change in the way business people think about work? That needs to be, and these are habits, right? So these need to be worked on. And then I can give them a methodology and they'll understand in the right frame and they'll break away from it.
Okay, so if I interpret your question rightly, so you are recommending that that people, a small team, first get into the mindset, and when they want to scale, recipe, because as on a day one you have not played at that level, you may pick up the recipe, but since you have good fundamentals, you have made things well for your own on project or in a small team, you will apply those mindsets, those fundamentals in that recipe also, and then you will modify it, evolve it. So it's like a mixture of your experience and agile mindset, and using the methodology as a starting point, or using a recipe as a starting point rather than and creating something from zero.
That's exactly it, yes.
Okay, but here is the problem, because you keep talking about changing mindset, you keep talking about changing habits, changing behavior, but that's a difficult job. People won't be able to do it, you see, because
So let me interrupt you there. Yes, it is difficult, but what do we do? So that's exactly the problem. That's exactly why when people, and by the way, what I'm saying is not new. People that get this get it, but they look at two things. I need to educate my organization, or I can roll out a new process. Which is easier? Roll out a new process.
short term roll out
Of
the new
course.
process. Yeah.
Of course. However, there is a real risk in the sustainability of that investment and that agility, right? So culture changes, mindset changes take time. And we don't want to take time, right? We want quick solutions. Our CIO told us, hey, we need to become agile by the end of the year. So go.
And here's a metrics.
Oh, and yes, and let's get a tool to accelerate that. What are we doing? We have actually, this is actually exactly why I'm actually here talking to you about this, because when the Agile Manifesto came out, it wasn't about a change in process. It was a change in the way people think, in the values and principles of people. However, what came upon after that was a massive education in Scrum as a methodology. So it's like people didn't get time to absorb the mindset shift, right? Now we move to scaling, right? And still we have not absorbed the change in mindset. And so the reality is, even though the manifesto that we all refer to says individuals and interactions over processes and tools, we are more focused on processes and tools in our scaling efforts than individuals and their education and how they interact. And let me show you and the rest of the people on the call a couple of pictures to demonstrate that, if I may. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, please.
All right. So I want to show you sort of how a lot of people view agile transformations, and then we can talk about this. So can you see the slide again?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you can see the slide here, let's talk about this for a minute. So process adoption versus culture transformation. When we are doing a process change, right, the focus is on process technology and structure. There's training involved. There's cascading decisions. We will become agile by the end of the year, right? There's communication plans and there's compliance and metrics that are put in place. Culture transformations don't happen that way. They happen by focusing on people and culture, by focusing on education, by creating shared vision and buy-in, and by establishing commitment. I can't create an audit system for mindset, right? I can't do that. I can't create a compliance organization that goes and audits people. Do you have the right mindset or not? So when we look at an organization, what are we actually changing? There's a question there. So how do we change culture, right? Great question. So first of all, let's really understand what culture is. Here's how I view culture. If we take an organization and dissect it, we have leadership, their styles, values, habits. We have strategy, how the goals are put in place, how measures of success are put in place, how rewards are put in place. We have structures, right? How organizational design happens, how teams are structured, roles and responsibilities. We have processes, right? Whether they're business processes, operational processes, or whatnot. And then we have people. The sum total of all of this is what culture is. The sum total of all of this is what culture is. So imagine culture is a rubber band around these items, okay? Now, if you are trying to change process, here's what you're doing. You're actually changing one element of the culture, okay? The real problem here, Saket, is you're actually not changing the culture. You're straining the culture. You're creating pressure on the culture. So if you imagine this as a rubber band, the moment you remove the impetus for change, or whatever the change, the desire for change is, right, what will happen to the process? It will go right back to where it is. Why? Because sure, I have a collaborative process, but I have no reward system that reward for collaboration. My structures aren't structured for collaboration. Leadership does not actually value collaboration, they value competition, right? People's beliefs are that collaboration takes too long, so why do we invest time in it? Does that make sense? Now, when I look at what needs to change, you truly need to change. So what we're changing is we're not changing one part of the organization, we are changing the organization. We're taking the entire organization on a journey. So the right question to ask is, what needs to change from leadership's perspective to be more collaborative? What needs to change from our strategy perspective to be more collaborative? Structure perspective, process perspective, and people perspective. And if we do that, then we really understand that there's two basic elements of a transformation. There are human elements and there's non-human elements, right? The leadership and people are the human elements that need to change. And I call out leadership specifically, even though they are people, because the massive impact that their behaviors have on how an organization change. When we look at the non-human elements, we're talking about strategy, structure, and process. I'm going to ask you a question. If you look at the scaling frameworks that are out there, if you look at the conferences that talk about scaling, if you look at the panels that talk about scaling, what are they talking about? Strategy, structure, or process, or how to change people?
Mostly we are limited to the process, and I do relate with your slide where we were taking process in a different dimension and we are putting a strain on a system. And I feel that is what is happening. People are bringing the process back. So back where it used to be, by way of putting more governance, more measurements, more KPIs, because it was something there before. Now Scrum came in, people became self-organized, and management got confused what is happening. It says, let's do something about it and bring them back. So put some layer on it, put some maybe by name of scaling, by name of governance, by name of whatever. And they are kind of removing that strain by not changing it, by bringing it back. So
second, spot on, my friend. That's exactly what's happening. So you moved it, and then people are like, no, this isn't working. Why? Why isn't it working? Well, here's why it's not working. Because you have not changed the way people think. Your leaders, your people, you have not changed the structures to support that new way of working. And so that's why I'm saying, you're gonna put dad or less or safe on top of these? What are you actually trying to do? Now, the question is, who are we kidding? What I'm saying and what you're saying, I'm hoping is not new for people. However, part of the old mindset is checking the box, right? The checking the box says, boss, you want 10 agile teams? I'll call them 10 agile teams, right? We'll put stickies up on a wall and we'll say they're doing 2-week iterations, right? So that's what they're doing. And then on top of that, the 2-week iterations are simply milestones to a large waterfall process. Right? Why? Because our governance structures haven't changed. What our clients are asking, so again, I want to be conscious, we're talking to a lot of people in India today, right? You have a lot of outsourcing work. If your client's mindset has not changed, Who are you kidding? If your client's mindset is still, let me give you the requirements, go do Agile and come back to me in 3 months, who are we joking here? Is it about just getting more certified Scrum Masters and having the stamp? Right? We have 5,000 certified Scrum Masters. We are the best Agile shop out there. Right? So people are asking, how can people change the mindset unless we start applying Agile? Yes, you have to apply Agile. And you have to learn what the mindset is first. Right? It's the picture I showed. From which way are you approaching it? Right? You need to really understand the mindset first and then go apply it, because it's a very nuanced problem here. If you don't understand the mindset first and you simply go to apply it, it looks similar to what we've been doing before. Iterative development is not new. It's been there since the 1950s. Most people, if you ask them what is the difference between Agile and iterative development, they will not be able to answer. Or they're going to talk about user stories, or that we all sit in a room together. That was called war rooms. They were called use cases, right? We had all this before. The processes were there, but the mindset didn't change and still isn't changing. The revolution of Agile is about saying, wait a minute, the industrial age way of thinking about work is not applicable in a knowledge age. You cannot keep telling people what to do. Their motivation factors are different. You as a business need to engage the developers in the business problem, because they are going to be partners in creating a solution. Not that there are business people that know what the solution is and just give it to the factory workers inside of IT to develop it. It's the same mentality that we had in factories. We had engineers and designers that designed the car, and workers that were told, please do not think, just go build. That's the mindset we're changing. But today we've put them in different terms. We have a product owner and a team. And if the team just says yes to the product owner, what have we changed? So to your point, yes, you have to apply Agile, of course, to solidify any new concept that you learn. But what are we learning first?
Okay, so like if I look at various surveys, I did some research a few months back or 1 year back, where a good amount of agile project failed agile project got studied, and the survey was giving a reason of cultural problems. So culture was not supportive. That's why the agile adaptation failed, and people went back to their original way. Again, the culture is such a complex and big thing. It's difficult to point out on a particular specific issue. But like from where we start, it looks like that it's all about looking beyond processes, but processes may have some advantages as well. Like even if we start from a process, say working software, ICAgile development, maybe not the new concept, but this method does bring visibility. They at least exposes the problems early than our existing in processes, but we may not be able to take all the fruits of agile mindset. So we can start with the processes, because see, looking at a mindset level, leadership level change is a big thing. It's a really big thing, and companies who are like really struggling to survive, they can only think about that we need to make such changes. Till the time their revenues are at a decent level, they may not change.
Let me challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree. Organizations are very busy today with the short-term problems. However, here's what I think the problem is, and someone is saying it on the chat window. It's the C-suite, they're saying. And I'm saying, wait a minute, let's before we judge the C-suite, let's understand what the problem is here, or part of the problem. Where did Agile start? In IT or in business?
Business.
IT, okay. The view of IT in most organizations, are they the thinkers or the doers?
Doers. They
Very
just
good,
do.
very good. Bear with me, I'm going to take it step by step. The analogy I have for you, this is like a factory where the factory line workers say, hey boss, we have a better way of doing this factory stuff. Says, great, just don't break anything. So, okay, we're going to go do it. So you're going to keep my KPIs up here? It's like, yeah, I mean, it's just a better way of developing software. It's like, dude, do whatever you want to develop better software, please. You need $1,000 to go do training. Go do training. Right? They don't need to change anything, right? Look at the dynamic here. We have a better way of doing software. Go do it, please. All welcome, right? Anything we can do to get the factory running more efficiently is better. The difference here is our transformation is an organizational transformation starting from IT. Never in the history of technology has a culture transformation started from IT. All culture transformations start from the C-level, start from the business, and trickle down to IT. So most executives don't even know till this moment, as me and you are talking live today, right, on May 28th of 2015, most of them don't even know that Agile affects them. That's why when we talk about the problem and talk about C-level being the problem, I don't want to call it the problem. I want to call it they are unaware that this is a organizational transformation, not an IT transformation. Now, the word IT transformation second is actually quite dangerous because every time in our past history of 50 to 70 years, when we said the word IT transformation, guess what it has been? It has been about processes and tools. It has been a rollout of an ERP, right? It has been a rollout of Six Sigma or a new process or whatever it is. It has always been process. So we have language that says this is an IT transformation. Check. What do we need to do with an IT transformation? Train all 5,000 people, not educate, right? Create the tools, have a communication plan. Let's roll it out, right? This is all what the slide that I used to show, right? This is all about a process change. This is not a culture change. Culture change usually started from the top, but the top don't even know that this is their problem. They don't even know that it's not about IT getting more efficient. It's about you as a business and your ability to pivot and change depending on customer needs and requests, depending on how the market is changing. That's the real challenge that we have. Most organizations, and I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but this is really important. Most organizations that realize the need for a real transformation, this is the kind of dialogue that happens. We are no longer a car company or an oil company or a phone company. Today, we are a technology company. And if we are a technology company, we have to act, be, structure ourselves like a technology company. If you look at most industries today, what's happening? Right? What is really happening today? Technology is getting into everywhere. Someone was asking me a couple of weeks back, so which domains are doing Agile? I was like, every domain that has a computer. Right? Every domain that has a computer. Which industry today is not relying heavily on technology? Point that out to me. That's the only domain that probably doesn't need Agile.
Okay,
but
so
even construction, right? I was sitting with people that build the largest tower in the world. The amount of technology. They're thinking about we're going to have changing requirements. So we need to lower the cost of change. So we're going to invent technology similar to what we've invented in the software domain so that we can lower the cost of change, and so that the architecture office in halfway around the world can change the design as the building is being built in a desert. Right? That's business agility. Forget Scrum, forget SAFe, forget any of these right now. We're talking about a revolution of business. And the businesses that do not understand that this is the next wave, they're out. And look at our industry. Look at where technology companies have totally overcome long-established companies in their domain. Why? Think about it.
True.
Because they have an agile mindset.
And here we can relate it with the scalability. So when we want to scale Agile, it means that we want to scale it across the organization, across the leadership, and in the business dimension. So if we want to take Agile mindset at an organization level, that is something where the scalability comes into the picture. And companies who are realizing the need of it are either they are getting challenged from the market and they are struggling to survive, so they have to figure it out how to sustain, or they are innovative, they are proactively understanding the need, and rather than getting stressed because of the survivability issue, they are upfront ahead of the time, understanding the need and understanding the digital world, understanding that IT is everywhere. One car engine may have double the code than Facebook. So it's everywhere. It's code, it's development, be it embedded. So in order to sustain, they need to scale. They scale the work which small IT team is doing at an organizational level. So is that the message which we can conclude on if we talk about scaling Agile in a nutshell?
Yeah, I think to conclude in a nutshell, scaling Agile is not about scaling Scrum into scaled Scrum or SAFe or DAD or any of these. Scaling Agile is about changing the way the organization thinks, their habits, their cultures. The way you do that, it is a long educational journey that consists of the following: education, coaching, and mentoring for executives and people. It consists of changing process, structure, and strategy. And that's where SAFe comes in. That's where DAD comes in. That's where less comes in, right? I am not negating that, but I'm saying, similar to how the manifesto says, we value this over this, I value changing the way people think over changing their process. That's what I value. Because if you truly want sustainable agility, think about it. Which is going to be more sustainable? If you change, just imagine, everyone with me on the call, imagine if your executives were agilists in the way they think, your managers, we had coaches, the developers, the testers. Imagine if everyone embarked on a common educational journey to learn about Agile, not about process. I'm not talking about a 2-day class here. I'm talking about a craft and mastery of a craft in each of these different disciplines. And so Agile, we have truly Agile leaders that inspire and coach, right? We have truly Agile managers that empower and create environments that are safe for people to speak up and create nonlinear career paths and all that, right? Imagine an organization like that. Do you care if they apply SAFe or less or anything else? But imagine the opposite. If you have an organization that has beautifully applied any of the scaling methodologies, but the way people think has not changed.
Great. And let's talk about ICAgile, like before we conclude, because we have last, say, 10 minutes time. Are you coming up with some scaling education program in ICAgile?
Yes, I mean, so for those who don't know, what is ICAgile? It is sort of a life dream of mine, right? After I finished my PhD, I saw the gap that I'm talking about to you today, right? And that there really isn't education, there's training in the Agile space. And so what we wanted to create is a roadmap to answer people's questions that you guys are asking on the question board right now. What do people need to learn, right? How much learning are we talking about? 2 days, 5 days, 7 days, right? And the answer is yes, all of the above. But the real question is, what do they need to learn? And so I'm going to, again, share my screen here for a second to show. This is a resource available to them that they can use, because basically what we tried to answer at ICAgile, and let me share my screen here one more time. So I hope you can see the website. What we tried to answer at ICAgile is, what does this roadmap look like? And so we said, there's a leadership track, there's a testing track, there's development, coaching, management, value management, which is the business side, enterprise Agile coaching. And we said, for each of these, there's a set of learning objectives, right? So if you click on any of these, let's take coaching and facilitation, right? We've bundled them into bite-sized certifications. Why did we do certifications? Certifications are bad or good. That's a debate that I don't want to go into right now. But here's why. Because this is a multi-year journey of learning, right? And if you don't give people on a multi-year journey of learning motivational milestones, they won't continue. Look at where most of the Agile education is today. It's in a 2-day class called Certified Scrum Master, or whatever it is, right? Or a 3-day PMI ACP, or whatever it is. That's not my concern. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, that's great, and there is more. And learning does not stop. And so to keep people on that learning path, we had to create these motivational milestones, because ultimately what we want people to aspire towards is mastery in these disciplines. So if you look at, for example, any of these, you can click here on the learning objectives, and this is what people need to learn. This is actually what people need to learn. So whether you apply this, certification and accreditation model or not, that's not what we're here about. Like, let's take a look at Agile management, just as an example, right? If we look at Agile project management, look at the learning objectives. This is what we want people to learn. Tolerating ambiguity and uncertainty, right? Strategically levering constraints, managing trade-offs, managing budget, managing team performance, establishing effective teams and charters and working agreements. This is not process. This is not about a methodology. This is about what people need to change in the way they think. This is education. And so that's what that's our mission, is to create an educational roadmap for the entire organization. So this is a journey that everyone can embark on. Take your testers through the testing track, your developers through the developers track, right? People through coach. And by the way, notice that these aren't roles, these are disciplines. Because we may have developers that need the coaching and the development. We may have managers that need the coaching and the management. I don't know. It depends on how you organize your organization. But what I know is that managers need to learn about stuff like this, right? Lean thinking, constant learning, adaptability versus predictability. What is the difference between a networked organizational structure and a hierarchical? How do you manage non-linear career paths and career progressions inside of an organization that keeps changing roles? How do you do that? Second, that's what we don't know today. But we definitely know how to do stand-ups. We definitely know how to write user stories, right? And that's my appeal. And this program, I'm not saying this is for everyone. If you want to be certified in a methodology, go get those certifications. But this isn't about certification. This is about mastery. If you want to become a master in a discipline, and I'll tell you this right now, live in front of hundreds of people, this isn't about certification, right? If you want certification, this probably isn't the program for you. However, if you want to deepen your mastery in a craft, right? If you truly want to change the way you think in these disciplines, this is the program for you. And there's no other program like it, because it will take you on a journey to learn about these things. And then at the end, it will test you with competency. Have you actually transformed what you learned into something that you can apply? And that's how you get the expert certification. It's not by submitting an essay or a portfolio. You actually have to get in front of a live panel and demonstrate. You do 15 minutes of live coaching. You show a video of yourself facilitating work with a team. You actually have to teach the panel something. Like, it is all, can these people actually do it? Imagine if we have organizations like that, where we have hundreds of ICAgile experts in there, which means that these people have been verified that they know what they do. Today, we hire people based on, we look for certain certifications. Again, not to promote ICAgile per se, but if you start hiring people that have, or that are on this journey, that's very different than saying, I want to just hire people that have a certification. I want to hire people that are on a learning journey, because that shows me that their mindset has changed. I want to hire people that are on a journey to master their discipline, because I know that they will be continuously motivated.
Great. And for the scaling, I presume that leadership, management, coaching, all
leadership,
these
management, and we just launched the enterprise coaching track.
Enterprise coaching.
The enterprise coaching track is a phenomenal track. It's been 2.5 years in the making. The way we make this is important for everyone listening. We don't sit in a room and do this. We gather experts from around the world, thought leaders in these areas, to sit down, and it takes 2 to 3 years to develop a track set, right? Why? Because they actually have to codify, what do people need to learn? And that's not an easy question to answer. And by the way, all of this is methodology agnostic, so that you can take this learning and tailor it to how you want it inside of your organization.
Interesting, Ahmed, and it was very nice talking to you. So do you have some concluding lines for this whole session, talking about scaling, education, mindset?
You have another hour?
No.
My concluding thoughts, first of all, I want to appreciate you bringing me on. You have successfully unleashed a passion of mine, but you knew that before you brought me in. The thing I want to conclude with is a true appeal to every practitioner out there to really stop thinking about Agile as a process and start thinking about it as a mindset. And educate, be patient with executives, right? They just don't know, right? They're not bad people. I work a lot with executives. I am an executive in my organization. It's not that people just are bad, or, as some people are saying, they'll fire me. They don't know. There's a lot of education that needs to be done to executives, and it's going to take time. Agile transformations are not things that are done overnight. They do take time. I invite you to look at the ICAgile roadmap, download it, learn from it, put this as a learning roadmap. And what we do is look for courses that are ICAgile accredited, because what that means is that people that are ICAgile accredited, they have been vetted by ICAgile to make sure that they cover these learning objectives, because we ultimately want to protect the student and make sure that they're learning what the experts said they need to learn, so that we build more competent people within our organizations. And that's how we will achieve sustainable organizational agility.
Great. Thank you, Ahmed. And we were hoping that you will join our conference sometime. Like, we are doing a conference in Delhi, Discuss Agile Network. We have a conference which will run on 13th and 14th June. I know you had a great session in Bangalore. I think about 2 months ago, you were in Bangalore. So hopefully we will see you sometime in our conference as well. And we will be also doing bigger conferences. So you can
and people are asking about the slides. Is it public domain? My keynote from the Agile India conference covers this topic with examples of what some companies have been doing. I believe that's out in the public domain. And Saket, if it's an honor to be on this, and would love to be on future ones.
Great. And the keynote video is also available that Ahmed is talking about, the Agile India video where Ahmed is talking about his approach for mindset is available. I'm not sure about the slides, but I have seen the video.
Yeah, and
So
I think the video will cover the slides. And again, my website, ahmedsidky.com, there's a couple of videos about how to actually scale those, going into a little more detail, how to create transition roadmaps and how to change people's habits. So any information I have is probably public domain somewhere. It's just a matter of Googling at that point.
great. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Second.